Hi there everybody, and welcome to this training. So this training is about understanding where our pupils are at in terms of in their brain and in their mind when we're working with them. And it's really important to understand and comprehend that if any of us are carrying elements of stress in our life, which at certain times are more heightened than others, it's going to not only affect our behaviour, but also our performance academically. The way that the brain works for us is that the learning centre basically goes into complete lockdown when stress is released, which means that any guided lesson, any learning experience, any conversation after an event or trauma or argument in the playground that we're trying to have as a teacher and guide them is essentially pretty much wasted, because the child is in such a heightened level of stress. So what I'm going to share with you today is actually what is happening in the brain when that happens, in a very child friendly way actually, so that you can comprehend and take insight into when is a good point for you to have a conversation with a pupil. How can you keep stress levels for yourself and your pupils and the parents and your colleagues lower? Because essentially what is happening when we're in this heightened state is everything becomes harder. Our logical part of the brain deteriorates and deactivates. We go into survival mode. Our memory capacity decreases and our learning capacity decreases, and we go into reaction and panic mode rather than logic, responsive, learning, enhancing, creating ideas and solutions. So every time that we have a pupil or you that is in a moment of stress, essentially it is like trying to claw up a hill that is, you are sliding down because there's so much mud, you've got weight on your back and you cannot get up. So this is really, really important to get our heads around. And when I started to really take consideration into this within my communication with everybody within the school that I was working with, it really began to shift. So I've got a balloon here, and I'm going to sit this down in front of me so that this is going to represent the learning centre of the brain. And the learning centre in the brain is essentially needs to open up so it can bridge and send messages down through our body so that we can take learning, we can absorb, we can create memory. And in addition to this being in the brain and many other things, we have a little man, and this is called Mr. Stress. Could be a lady, a man or a lady called Mr. or Mrs. Stress. And they live in a little garage in our head. For most of us, some people, they're out a little bit more prominent than others. And they only come out if they're challenged, if they're brought into fight or flight mode, if something goes on and it goes into high alert, warning, the doors open, the walls come down, and this little dude goes into complete panic mode. And he starts running around the learning centre of the brain, not allowing any messages from the outside, any voices that come in to get there. He's like knocking them away, going, no, 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 no. As the stress increases, an argument flares up, a pupil kicks off with another pupil, or you ask a child to pick something up in the class and they don't want to, and it triggers them and they get angry. This little man or woman gets so much more powerful that they get in a truck and they go into protective mode even more. So at this point, every time an external solution comes in, every time an external request comes in, every time you instigate a conversation to try and solve the problem that's happening, if this little dude is driving around in the brain, all that is going to happen is that he's going to knock it away. And the more you continue to talk, the truck essentially gets bigger. And so we've got our little person now driving in a really big truck to defend literally everything that you are saying away. And not only that, but as he or she stands in your head talking, you're going to start hearing responses that they're going to tell you to say. They never understand me. No one gets how hard it is for us. And all of these voices based on fear start coming out, and we believe that to be our truth. No one ever listens to me. I always give ideas. I never get the answers. I never get star of the day. No one cares what I think. Why do I always get asked to do the jobs for the teacher? Why do I always get in trouble when they hit me first and I get hit? Whatever it is that the argument is about, these voices come out. But if you haven't dealt with voices from previous arguments, what also comes out in this battle is all the voices from all the other arguments that you're carrying. So suddenly, we're in this space where the brain is flooded so deeply with panic. This used to be, this little person here is, so amazing in the times of an accident, or if somebody's life is at risk and we have to protect them, we step into that protective bear mode. It goes back to the cavemen of surviving and running away from saber-toothed tigers. But because we don't have that anymore, this little person in our head still wants a job. So we start creating stresses sometimes where they don't exist, because he's like, yeah, I've got a job, I'm coming out. And before we know it, we get into force. So how do we get this car back into the garage? How do we get this little person to go back into their garage and to rest and be free so that stress isn't rushing around the body? Well, there's lots of ways, and that's what we're going to support you with. Because if we can reduce this stress and this person goes away, the brain is left with this open, expansive space. So when you're having a conversation with your pupil, they're in what we call receptive mode, which means that their brain is open and heightened. And the learning centre here can be on what I like to call full maximum sponge effect, where they can absorb from you. If it starts to close and he comes or she comes out, you are then going up a hill with weights on your back, and it's muddy and it's wet, and everything you are going to say, you're going to slide down that hill, and you're not going to get your child and you up to the top, up to their potential, up to self-actualization, up to playful, passionate learning, because this person will do everything to stop it. So we need to keep this away, so that this learning centre is a bridge to optimise learning for emotional and academic potential, for positive communication experiences, so that they can receive and they can communicate and they can learn openly because they feel safe. So it really does come back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, in terms of when we feel safe, we've got a fighting chance of keeping this person away, keeping them in that garage so that the learning centre of the brain can open up. There are a series of things that we can do to create an environment as a teacher where we can keep this learning centre of the brain open to learn. But not only that, we can increase the happy hormones in the body that flow around the body, because if we increase the happy hormone release, the learning centre of the brain increases its capacity to absorb information, which means that the more that children ignite happy hormone release, their learning centre of the brain opens up so substantially that their memory will increase, their focus will increase, their productivity will increase, which means that in terms of your job and the part you really love as a teacher of giving them information and watching them and facilitating them grow, is going to be open. They're going to be able to communicate clearer and with more confidence, because they don't have stress raging around their body. They won't feel paranoid. They won't feel insecure. So a couple of questions that I'm going to provide for you to think about as you go away into your week. When you're having a conversation with somebody, if you can remove yourself out of it and what you want out of it for a moment, if you feel that this little person is out, are you wasting your breath by trying to talk to them at this point? Are you going to solve anything by keep talking, or are you going to create more of a battle where you'll never get your message across? So that's number one. Number 2, start becoming the observer. Who is entering your class with a heightened stress rate already, where they've already got this person driving around in their head, and that maybe it's that bad, home is hard, that they've got a whole garage, an army of people knocking anything that anyone says because it's been a traumatic morning for them. And just clock how they're responding, and are you initiating anything that can release and calm and make them feel safe, so that we get those people and those trucks back in the garage so the learning centre can be open. And the last question is to start clocking any patterns in your class or individual behaviours, or even of yourself, where you feel that stress is increasing. And when you start to clock that and you share that with us, then we can start equipping you with strategies. And over the next month, we'll be sharing with you ways that you can release happy hormones amongst your children very, very powerfully, very, very quickly, but to enable pupils who are coming in with stress to start releasing that. And this is the really important part, because this is often where some of them get forgotten. And for those pupils that are coming in already quite happy and they're learning, they're very open to learn, their learning centre in the brain is open, these activities will also be so relevant to them, because every one that they do, the happy hormones are going to increase so dramatically in that type of child that their learning centre in the brain is going to open up to such a higher sense of absorption that the information that you're going to give them is going to be retained on heightened levels. So you are taking the child that is high achieving in your sessions, and you will be upping their memory level. You will be upping their ability to communicate. You will be upping their ability to feel confident and to ask questions and gain insight and reflection and get to self-actualization in an even more powerful way. So you, as the ringleader of your class, have the capability to facilitate absolute change by having this conscious awareness of how stress is released in the body. And it absolutely changed everything about the way that I delivered and structured my classes. And in order, before we take those techniques on, and that's going to start over the next 2 weeks, is we have to gain awareness of where those patterns are showing up. Where are the most stressful times in your life and in your pupil's life and in your parents of the pupil's life? Those 3 areas. And just clock, just gain awareness, play with it this week of just seeing where stress is showing up for you. And then you can share that with us in the Google Doc, and we will then be able to instigate a series of very, very powerful, short, sharp techniques that are going to change your classroom practice and are going to start changing your approach. So the more you communicate with us, the more we can support you. I would really, really like to invite you that any observations that you get, you add to your Google Doc so that we can start to have a communication. And I'd also like to invite you that if any of you want to email us and share your story or start up a conversation that way, I would love to connect with you and hear how it is, so that we can really get things moving for you. These are challenging times, and it's really important that we unite and come together so that we can keep this little person in the garage where they belong, so that we can all have a deeper sense of feeling secure and safe. And when we do that, we can all escalate up this power of learning to self-actualization and optimizing and reaching our true potential.